And I'm a cat lover, as some of you know, but really. Now, I'm going to be frank tonight because I'm going to bring up something. This is only a short introduction or short presentation. After that, I want to throw it open to discussion and problems. We might like to look at what's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church too, which is very useful, very well compacted on this question. But I'm going to bring up something tonight before I finish this presentation, this short presentation. Some Catholics have become entangled with New Age superstitions. So we're not talking about something that's over there. We've got to be honest about this. And some have even got sucked into deep occultism and play around with neo-paganism. There are Catholics who visit psychics, who pay money to astrologers to have charts cast. There are some, certain ethnic groups, who still, in spite of what the priests might say, seek out witches. And the word can be used for male or female. The technical word in English for a male one is warlock, but we use the word witch to cover all. Or they go to mediums. Certain ethnic communities have long been prone to these activities, which the Church says are sinful. The Church says that, based on our Jewish heritage, consistently through the Old Testament, magic, soothsayers, astrology, all that. No. In fact, some of the prophets even have humorous comments about how they behave, jumping up and down and chirping like birds when they're having the spirits come. It runs right through the Old Testament and into the New, and the early Christians inherited the same classical tradition. If you worship God, you don't go to false gods or creatures or entities or beings or elementals, spirits, which can lead you elsewhere, because some of them are going to turn out to be daemons, or demons as we call them, that is, fallen angels from the abyss. And if you want to, we might get into that tonight a bit too, but I don't want to go too far down that track because people will go home and won't be able to sleep or have some very interesting dreams. The New Age has made it easier for people to justify these practices on ethnic and cultural grounds. The practices are condemned by the Church in the Catechism, and when people get caught up in them in a deep way, they're going to need spiritual therapy within the church community, and this is constantly happening. In many dioceses, exorcists have had to be reappointed, particularly with the rise of the New Age movement. There is an official exorcist in Rome who's regarded as the leading one in the world, Father Amort, and he practices surgery hours, if you like, weekdays, near the Holy Steps up near the Lateran. And he also travels the world and does training courses. We don't publicise this too much. He's written a couple of books which are read within the church community. We have to be careful because, as we know, Hollywood grabs hold of this and they blow it up and make movies out of it. Some of those movies they've made seem to be quite accurate, believe it or not. Deliverance is a ministry to lift people out of the diabolical influences. Because from a Christian perspective, and the Jewish perspective is exactly the same, this all comes from hell. Put it bluntly and simply. And if you play around with it, you're playing around with hell, playing with hellfire. You keep playing with that, that'll be the choice that you make forever and ever and ever. Particularly if you play around with spells and curses. A spell and a curse? Is that the new commandment of love of Jesus Christ? It's the inversion of it. And when you see goodness at its best turned upside down, inside out, then you see the claw or the hoof of the enemy, Satan, the devil. He or she, the devil. I actually think the best presentation of the devil in a film I've ever seen was in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. Female body and a male voice. As we'd say in the old days with racing, two bob each way on that. And it was true. Because in classical Catholic faith, the devil is a fallen pure spirit, an angel, as we say, which is a cover-all term we use for these mysterious entities, and he is genderless or sexless, pure spirit. We need deliverance if we get into his clause. Therefore, in some cases, most cases, that'll require a good confession and the Eucharist, and adopting a private Christian rule of life and keeping out of it, and not getting caught up in the swamp, as C.S. Lewis liked to call occultism. There are other ways, however, into the New Age, or doors, if you like, and that's led some very nice Catholics, unfortunately, to go down that track. There are Catholics who take up justice issues in ecology. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good cause. But then they turn that into what is called a creation spirituality or eco-spirituality. That leads into beliefs about God as a world spirit, not the creator God, but a spirit in the trees, in the water, in the ocean, a God who is in fact a prisoner of the world of the universe, pantheism. And that idea of God is the basis of the most simple religions, spiritist religions, that our ancestors all practiced from all cultures in this room. We're free of that. But when you find sophisticated Christians drifting into that, what's happening? You end up with people taking up the spiral goddess, Celtic spirituality. Well, there is good Celtic spirituality, St. Patrick, etc., but they mean more than that. They mean going into the pre-Christian Druid cults. Well, let's not glorify the Druids. They practiced the sacrifice of teenagers, which is what the Christian missionaries like Patrick and Boniface stopped. And that's why they chopped the magic trees down. Culturally, very politically incorrect, but the people were glad to get rid of those Druid priests, and they much preferred to have the Christian ones come and enlighten them with the gospel of Christ and stop human sacrifices and other abominations. I give a little codicil to that too. Be careful when you hear people whinging and wailing about what the terrible Spaniards did in the New World, in Mexico and Peru, all the massacres they carried out when they conquered. Well, they did. They were brutal and they were greedy for gold. Let's be honest about that. But what did they stop? They stopped and saved the lives of thousands and thousands of teenagers and children who were regularly sacrificed by being disemboweled. Open heart surgery with a stone knife on top of a pyramid. The revolting downside of that culture, which in many ways was a sophisticated culture, can never be forgotten. So let's get the balance of the books right on that one. And don't fall for the politically correct attack on Catholicism that comes out of that. When the Spaniards came, that stuff stopped, and it stopped in its tracks fast. And they certainly hosed down and cleaned up those pyramids of death, which reeked of death. Some of them they knocked the top off and built a church there instead, which is one Christian trick of sanctifying a place where evil, and this can happen, can even be localised. Another door into this stuff for Christians, apart from that politically correct mentality, is feminist spirituality. Now, there's a good feminist spirituality taken from people like Hildegard of Bingen, St. Teresa of Avila, Teresa Benedicta Stein. That's within the mainstream of Catholicism, and it certainly has a mystical component, because Catholicism has a mystical element in it, particularly some European forms, and the Church respects that. We're not closed to that. Calvinist Christianity, very sceptical about that. We're not. We're open to that. There's a flexibility there. But there is a feminist spirituality which is unfortunately linked to New Age, goddess worship, and it's called sometimes ecofeminism, whatever that really means. There are some misguided Catholics, and I regret to say a few naive male and female religious in religious orders who openly dabble in these areas. Their names and centres can be checked out on websites. They're becoming more open and vocal. There's several operating in this country, one not far from this city. As a matter of fact,